Summer 1518. The streets of Strasbourg were hot and crowded. Merchants shouted prices from wooden stalls. Children ran through narrow alleys. Life moved slowly beneath the heavy summer sun. Then something strange happened. A woman stepped into the street and began to dance. Her name was Frau Troffea. At first, no one paid much attention. Dancing in the streets wasn't unheard of during festivals. But this was different. There was no music, no celebration, just one woman dancing alone in the street. Hours passed. Her feet struck the stone pavement again and again. People stopped to watch. They laughed at first. Maybe she had too much wine. Maybe she had lost her mind. But the next morning, when the sun rose over Strasbourg, Frau Troffea was still there, still dancing. Her dress soaked with sweat, her feet bruised and swollen. Yet somehow, she kept moving. By the end of the second day, the laughter had stopped, because something was terribly wrong. At some point during the next few days, the impossible began to happen. Another woman stepped into the street and started dancing too. Then another, and another. Within a week, more than 30 people were dancing uncontrollably in the streets of Strasbourg. They weren't celebrating. Witnesses described something closer to panic. The dancers twisted and stumbled, their faces pale with exhaustion. Some begged for help. Some screamed. But their bodies continued moving. Their legs kicked and their arms swung as if controlled by something outside their own will. And the most terrifying part? They couldn't stop. Soon the entire city was watching. Men and women staggered through the streets, dancing for hours without rest. Some collapsed from exhaustion, but after recovering, many began dancing again. The people of Strasbourg were witnessing something they had never seen before. A plague, but not of disease. A plague of dancing. The city leaders of Strasbourg had no idea how to stop it. Doctors were called in. Priests were consulted. Theories spread through the city. Some believed the dancers were cursed. Others believed it was punishment from God. But the city council made a decision that would only make things worse. They believed the dancers suffered from an illness caused by overheated blood. According to the medical beliefs of the time, the only cure was simple. The dancers needed to keep dancing until the sickness left their bodies. So the authorities did something unbelievable. They built wooden stages in the city square. They hired musicians, drummers, pipers, even professional dancers. The idea was to help the afflicted dance the illness out of their system. Music filled the streets of Strasbourg, and the dancing continued. But instead of curing the problem, it made it explode. The sound of drums echoed through the city, and more people joined the dancers. Within weeks, hundreds were dancing in the streets. Men, women, children. Some danced until their feet bled. Others collapsed and had to be carried away. The dancers were drenched in sweat, gasping for air, but their bodies kept moving. Some witnesses claimed the dancers begged others to hold them down, to stop them from moving. But even when restrained, their bodies fought against the grip of those trying to help them. The movement seemed unstoppable. And then the deaths began. Historical records from the time describe horrifying scenes. People dancing until they collapsed from exhaustion. Others suffering strokes or heart attacks. Some died right there in the street. According to several chroniclers, As many as 15 people were dying every day at the height of the plague. The city had turned into a nightmare. The dancers staggered through the streets like ghosts, their eyes hollow, their bodies shaking, still dancing, still unable to stop. The stages the city had built became places of tragedy. Musicians continued playing while dancers collapsed around them. It was clear the strategy had failed. But by then, the plague had taken on a life of its own. Fear spread across Strasbourg. People avoided the streets. Families locked their doors. No one knew who might start dancing next. Some believed evil spirits had possessed the dancers. Others believed the city had angered God. The church stepped in. Religious leaders declared the dancing plague a punishment for sin. Eventually, the authorities changed their strategy. The music stopped. The stages were dismantled. The dancers were taken to a nearby shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus was believed to have power over strange neurological illnesses. There, the afflicted were given red shoes and blessed by priests. Slowly, the dancing began to fade. By early September of 1518, the plague had disappeared. Just as suddenly as it had begun, the survivors returned to their normal lives. But the question remained: what caused the dancing plague? Historians and scientists have debated the answer for centuries. And even today, no one knows for certain. One theory suggests the dancers were poisoned. Some historians believe contaminated rye bread may have contained a fungus called ergot. Ergot can cause hallucinations, muscle spasms, and strange behavior. The same chemical compounds found in ergot are similar to those used in LSD. But many experts reject this theory. Ergot poisoning typically leaves victims unable to move, not dancing for days. Another theory is mass hysteria. In the early 1500s, Strasbourg was a city under enormous stress. Famine, disease, economic hardship. Extreme psychological pressure can sometimes produce collective behavior, events where groups of people suddenly share the same strange symptoms. But even that explanation leaves questions unanswered. Why dancing? Why so many people? And why did it stop as suddenly as it began? The dancing plague of 1518 was not the only event like it. Across medieval Europe, similar outbreaks were recorded. Groups of people dancing uncontrollably in public spaces, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. Historians call these events dancing manias. But the outbreak in Strasbourg remains the most extreme case ever documented. Hundreds of people, weeks of dancing, and dozens of deaths. It remains one of the strangest events in human history. Today, the streets of Strasbourg are calm. Tourists walk across the same stone roads where the dancers once collapsed. Most people who pass through the city have never heard of the strange plague that once took over its streets. But historians still study the event, because the dancing plague reminds us of something unsettling. Human behavior can sometimes spiral into chaos. Fear, stress, belief. Under the right conditions, entire communities can lose control. And in the summer of 1518, an entire city danced itself into history.